Traders Corner was proudly brought to you by IG. Visit igmarkets.co.za to open a trading account today.
Welcome back. You're watching Traders Corner, and as always, I'm joined by Garth McKenzie, founder and editor of Traders Corner. Garth, welcome.
Hi, Julieta.
Garth, let's start off by chatting about that pairs trade that you put on last week for the portfolio. It's not a common trade that you put on. And maybe, given how it's performing, maybe you won't be considering another, but just tell us what's been happening with this trade.
Yeah, okay, so the pairs trade that we did was in MTN and Vodacom, so in the telecommunications space. And just to recap, what a pairs trade is where you take two stocks, generally you want them to be similar stocks in similar sectors, and you pair them off against each other. So you do that by going long of one stock and short of another stock. And the idea really is that you generally look at some sort of a mean relationship between the two stocks, and then you're looking for some sort of reversion back to the mean.
Yeah.
So in this case, what I had, if we look at the chart up on the screen at the moment, I've done a long MTN and a short Vodacom trade over here. Now, what this chart on the screen represents is the relative performance between MTN and Vodacom, whereby Vodacom is the base security and MTN is compared to it. Yeah. So it's a constructed chart, if you like, to represent the difference between the two, or the division between the two shares. You basically take the price of Vodacom and you divide it by MTN to get these figures. So what I had identified here was that on this relative chart, there's a downtrend that had been evident over here, and that it had acted as resistance on prior occasions. What this downtrend indicates is that Vodacom is underperforming MTN. And as always, we assume the trend is your friend until it bends. And therefore, I assumed that Vodacom would be likely to continue underperforming MTN. And when it got up to this resistance area here, which was at around about 0.65 on the relative, that's where I'd look to then initiate this pairs trade by going short of Vodacom and long of MTN. And if the pairs trade were to work out, then we would expect this to fall back down, and that's where our pairs trade would become profitable. So what I did was I shorted Vodacom at 113 Rand and 30 cents, and I bought MTN at 175 Rand 30. So it meant that our ratio for this pairs trade was 0.6463, right, which is right more or less where that resistance is that I'd identified. Now, if you look, it's sort of starting to maybe just break out of this downtrend here. So I'm not sure that this trade's right. It's not working for us at the moment. We're a little bit out of the money on it right now. My stop loss on it is basically above this pivot point over here, which is approximately 0.68 on the relative. So, I'm going to stick to it for now and stick to the strategy, but it's not, it hasn't worked as quickly and as accurately as I would have liked. So if it's wrong, as always, we've got a stop loss in place. We'd lose a little bit of money, but for the moment, I'm going to stick with the strategy here.
Okay, all right. So if you get stopped out, so be it. That's what happens.
Yeah.
What about the other two open trades in the portfolio? They both seem to be doing pretty well, though.
Yeah, we've got Grindrod and Sasol that we long of, and both of those seem to be doing fairly well. So let's have a quick look at each of those. Grindrod is the one that's up on the screen at the moment. What I'd identified here was the fact that the stock is in a rising trend. It's been pretty strong for the last couple of months, and you can see there's an ascending triangle pattern over there. What I did was I bought for our portfolio 4,300 CFDs at 21 Rand in the anticipation that we were likely to see a breakout through the top of that resistance.
Yes.
And that did happen. As you can see over there, we've had a nice breakout. Typically, you then take the height of that triangle pattern at its broadest point and you project it up. You take that height and you project it up, and that gives you your target level, which in this case is 24 Rand 50. Now, we haven't quite got there yet. We've been trading around about 23 Rand, 23.50, that sort of area. But I'm still confident that this looks good. What I like here is the fact that the stock moves higher, it consolidates, it moves higher. It's again consolidating at the moment. It's allowing this stochastic to work off its overbought condition. And my sense is that we're probably setting ourselves up for another break to the upside here. And if it moves up towards our 24 Rand 50 target area, then I'll look to sell this.
Okay.
This company will report results probably towards the end of August or middle of August, some sort of time there and thereabouts. So what you might find is that it's possibly strong into the results, and then I'll look to sell it into that.
Okay, well, let's hope it does hit that target. It will be pretty gratifying if it did.
Would be.
What about Sasol? That also panning out quite nicely.
Sasol's also working out nicely for us. So again, here we had quite a nice steady rising trend. This is one of the strongest stocks in the resources sector, and I always like to play in the strongest stocks in the respective sectors, particularly if I'm going long. What we had here was a nice steady rising trend which went back to the middle of April, and you can see the lows all joining up on that lower trend line. We also had an overhead resistance here, and when the stock broke out through that 440 area where that resistance was, that opens up an upside target of 475 Rand. Now what I did here was I bought for our portfolio, I bought at 425 Rand, which was around here somewhere, and I've put a stop loss at 408 Rand, which basically would imply that it went below the lows of those couple of candlestick patterns over there. Obviously it's working nicely. We've seen a breakout through that rising, through that top trend line, which is good news. It does point to the higher target, as I mentioned. Just something that I've observed lately, though, is that there seems to be a little bit of resistance creeping in at about the 455 Rand area. You can see multiple tops at that area over the last 2 months or so. So that starts to maybe create a new area of resistance. But I'm still fairly confident here. That you might argue later starts to become an ascending triangle pattern, which is also a bullish pattern. What I like here is the fact that we've got a series of rising lows. So that indicates that the buyers are stronger at the lower levels. And ultimately, if this thing resolves, it should probably resolve to the upside.
I suppose maybe the one thing the market needs is some sort of catalyst, so either a much stronger oil price or a weaker rand. Otherwise, it could conceivably just bobble along this level for a while.
It could. The other possible catalyst will be that this stock also reports results soon. And historically, if Sasol's reported a trading update, it's usually been in sort of mid-August sometime, and then the results are usually out in early September. So I think that could possibly be a catalyst for this share to break out to the top side. So I'm watching for that. That would imply final results because this is a June year-end company. And if that, again, I think similar to Grindrod, you might find a situation where the stock actually trades strong into results, and then I'd probably look to bank that short-term profit into any further strength towards our target of 475 Rand.
Okay. This now getting onto this week's trade, it's quite interesting that you're long of two stocks which are fairly widely held and which are sort of considered, well, Sasol at least, a big South African holding, and yet your trade this week is a short of the top 40. So tell us what you're thinking there is.
Yeah, so we're looking at a short on the top 40 future here. A couple of reasons for this. I mean, the chart of it is up on the screen at the moment. And what's interesting here, and what every analyst in town seems to be talking about, is the possibility that we've got this big head and shoulders pattern forming, where you can see the shoulder on the left side, the head, and now we might be forming the right shoulder at the moment. And this pattern is not just evident on our market, it's actually evident on a few other international markets as well. So we're keeping a very close eye on this. What I see having happened over the last few days is that this rising trend that started in mid-June and has been very, very strong for our market, that's actually been broken over the last couple of days. And that, combined with the fact that our stochastic oscillator is very, very overbought now, it suggests to me that there's a possibility that we might start to see a little bit of weakness here and perhaps a pullback in our market. Also, what I'm thinking here is that August is seasonally a very weak month for equity markets. Around the world, it just seems that August is very often a seasonally weak month.
Partly, I suppose, summer holidays in the northern hemisphere, and of course August, I guess, was 2007 was when the initial financial rumblings began.
Yeah, it is. But I think the seasonal factor really has a lot to do with the northern hemisphere summer. It's the peak of the northern hemisphere summer. That's when all the Europeans and the British and the Americans and what have you take their summer holidays. So I think that might have something to do with it. But if you look back in the past, you'll notice that August is actually generally not a great month for equity markets. So, if I couple that seasonal factor together with the technical technical picture that I'm seeing here, I think there is a potential for a little bit of a pullback. And, the first level I'd look at is probably about 35,000, which is there. And then if we got lower than that, then maybe 33,800, which is where this neckline of this head and shoulders pattern comes in. Now, I mean, the ultimate bears out there would say, head and shoulders like this is very bearish, particularly if we were ultimately to break below that neckline. I'm not sure really that that's going to happen. We'll see. We'll have to monitor it in the weeks and months ahead. But for now, really what I'm looking at is the possibility that we can pull back here, make maybe a bit of money on a short trade, but I'm still fairly bullish, generally speaking, on a bigger picture. And
Yeah,
you
so
might still find that we set up, if we have a pullback here, it could potentially set up for a nice year-end rally.
Okay, so more of a short-term.
It's a short-term trade. I'm not turning bearish by any means. And you'll see also the risk that I'm putting on this trade is not our maximum risk either. It's it's slightly less risk than what I ordinarily would take.
Okay, got, so you have put this on for the portfolio, and just let's have a closer look.
Yeah,
I suppose,
well,
at the
this
top
is
40.
so now what I'm using to enact this trade is the top 40 future.
Okay.
And this is an hourly chart of the top 40 futures contract here. And what you can see is that now we're talking, that's middle of June over there, where this rising trend started. And you can see that we've recently, in the last few days, we've broken underneath this this uptrend. And the market is now starting to sort of consolidate underneath there. So what I've done for our portfolio is I've shorted one September futures contract at 36,350. Bear in mind that every 1 point on this futures contract represents 10 Rand. So effectively I'm taking an exposure here of 363,000 Rand on the short side. My stop loss is 36,850, so that's 500 points higher. And my targets are 35,000 on the downside and 33,800 potentially if we were to see a deeper sell-off.
Okay.
So that's basically what I'm seeing from a shorter term perspective. And as I say, we're using the top 40 futures contract. There are also top 40 CFDs available that can give you the same thing effectively, whether you're trading it through the CFD or the futures contract. Ultimately, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So in greater mechanics.
All right, so what I've done is I've shorted the one contract at 36,350. My stop loss is 36,850. So that means my risk is 500 points. And given that every point represents 10 Rand on these contracts, my risk is 5,000 Rand. That means my risk is 1.46% of our capital. We've got 341,000 trading capital at our disposal. So 5,000 Rand of that is 1.46%. My first target is 35,000. My second target is 33,800. So if we look at it in terms of risk to reward ratio, if it gets to the first target, my risk reward ratio is 1 to 1,7. And if it gets to my second target, then my risk to reward ratio is 1 to 5, which is quite a healthy risk reward ratio. So, that's where it is. I'm basically lining up for a period of potential seasonal weakness here, combined with the fact that I see those technicals breaking a little bit. And if I'm wrong, we lose 5,000 Rand.
Yeah, and just, Garth, it's not often that you have two targets. I mean, if it had to hover somewhere between target 1 and target 2, so between 35,000 and 33,800, and then started reversing, would you look then to take profits?
I would.
If it did that, of course.
If it did that, then I'd probably look to get out somewhere down there. And I'll have to assess it on a day-by-day basis and then decide from there.
Okay, so what does the portfolio look like? Not too different, I imagine, to last week.
No, it's very, very similar actually. I mean, I think we're a few Rand lower this week than what we were last week, but really not much. We're still up 36.5% for the year to date. You can see all the open trades that we've got there. We've long Sasol and Grindrod. We've got our pairs trade open in MTN and Vodacom, which is at the moment it's resulting in a net loss of 3,300 Rand for us. And then we've got this top 40 futures, which we shorted this week, and we've just put that on now.
All right, so that's what the portfolio looks like. Garth, upcoming trading courses, and also just a reminder about your website.
Yes, so I've got 2 courses coming up in Johannesburg. The Understanding CFDs course is on the 8th of August. It's an evening course and it's 2 hours long. And then I've got a high probability trading course, which is a full day course. That's on a Saturday, and that's the 17th of August. So anybody that's interested in attending one of these courses can email me and I'll send you the details. And then lastly, just to remind viewers again, my website, typically you'd pay 279 Rand a month for a subscription, but I am offering a free 7-day trial for people to just check it out and see what you get. You can get access into my insight, into my analysis. A lot of the trades that you see on this TV show are presented on the website beforehand, and many other trade ideas as well. So if you go onto the website, you'll see there at the bottom there's an option to select a 7-day free trial. Try it out for a week and see, and if you like it, then you can take it up as a paying subscription.
Okay, great. We have to leave it there. Garth, thanks as always for joining us on the show. That is Garth McKenzie, founder and editor of Traders Corner.
Traders Corner was proudly brought to you by IG. Visit igmarkets.co.za to open a trading account today.